Hey guys, it's James Walsh here from the Wrestling Epicenter. I'd like to thank you for finding us here on YouTube. If you get the opportunity, please click that subscribe button, as well as the notifications bell. This way, anytime that we upload any new content or new to you content from our archives dating back to 2002, you'll be notified. You can check out what we're up to. Please also check out www.wrestlingepicenter.com for all your wrestling news and information needs, as well as check out our store to keep us running free and clear. Without any further delay, let's get to why you're here. Thanks for checking out Wrestling Epicenter on YouTube.
Another edition of The Pile Driver. I am Patrick Kelly, and we are being joined by our very special guest, Bill DeMott. Bill, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. How you doing?
Awesome, man. It's great to have you on the show. First of all, just wanted to say that we're a big fan of your work, and we were all excited to hear that you unfortunately got released by the WWE last week. My question for you is, first of all, how are you coping with the release?
It's strange. This is my first Thursday in 2 years I've not at Deep South Television, so I find myself I've been pacing the carpets. It sinks in a little bit more each day, but after 18 years, you kind of get used to things like this, I guess.
Now, how long have you been with Deep South? Because we haven't seen you on TV, I believe, since 2002, 2003.
I've been with Deep South. It'll be 2 years in March or April. I think it's April. WWE since the last Velocity show I did, and I guess that was 2003. I've done some Deep South. While I was a commentator for Deep South Television, I made a few appearances in the ring, but I like behind the scenes stuff. That's kind of the progression of my career, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And go ahead, Jen.
How did you feel that Deep South Wrestling has progressed to become more like OVW, producing the top talent?
I don't know. A lot of people say compare Deep South and OVW. I trained in OVW for a year. And I love Danny Davis, and as I think everybody knows, I love Al Snow. Mm-hmm. I tried to make Deep South different, and just the way we went about things. Competition's probably the best thing, and we tried to outdo each other without trying to outdo each other, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
The talent that's in Deep South and some of the talent that's come out of Deep South, I'm just proud of them. I'm proud of the guys that are there now, and I think they'll just keep producing future stars.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that it's kind of the progression of your career, that you're now training guys. Is it kind of like the next logical step for great workers to kind of become the trainer so they can teach the young talent how to do it and how to do it right?
I don't know. I don't know who the great worker is.
That was me kissing up.
I think going from in-ring talent to commentating and follow guys like Taz, I think that was progression. I think becoming an agent is the next progression. And then when you have an opportunity to run a developmental territory like that, like I had in Deep South, I think, your career just keeps moving up.
I mean, obviously you like that, because in a press release that I posted on our website, it seems like you're looking more to do conventions in that sense, like seminars and such.
Oh, I love training camps. I did a couple of 3-day camps in other places in the country. I just dig that part of it. I like seeing what the guys have that are coming into the business and kind of bring them to a point to see how far they're willing to go. But make no mistake, I like being in the ring probably more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think of guys like Finlay, who became an agent but then decided to step back into the ring?
I think at the time they were looking for someone. I mean, this business is about believability. And unless you know Finlay, unless you know him, fans believe him because everything he does that's who he is 24 hours a day. Kind of like me, people ask, why are you a badass or whatever? I'm not. I'm just Bill. So I dig the fact that Finlay came back because he brought something back to the younger guys and has actually made a whole bunch of people step up.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that we interviewed Jerry Lawler a few weeks back, and he made a comment about how the younger guys need to learn from the older guys like him, and that he's not taking a spot away from Carlito. He's there to try to teach Chris Masters and Carlito what to do and when to do it. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think some of the guys, the younger guys that have come up, are being brought up into spots, and hopefully they're able to step in and fill shoes. But I think it's, again, that word progression. You have to teach them to to know what they're stepping into. And I think that's where a lot of my heat, if that's the right word, because I tried to educate everybody inside and outside the ring, so when they get called up, that they are prepared and they can step in there and they're on the same page as everyone else in sports entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Back in 1994 and 1995, you had 3 different WWE matches, to my knowledge. Was anything supposed to come out of those, or were they tryouts, or were they just...
94, 95. I think I was brought in by Jerry Jarrett. If I remember right, when Jerry was still with WWF. And it was right in between tours in Japan. And I was, just feeling the waters because I've been in Japan and that's where I made my living and everything. And I love the Japanese style. But in between tours, it was brought up that, hey, we could take a look at you. And you always jump at a chance to, I mean, I don't care who you are or what you say. Your dream as a wrestler was to become part of the WWF or now WWE.
Mm-hmm. You just mentioned it, but coming from Japan, was it difficult to go from what is known to be kind of a stiff style over to the U.S. and playing a character as I guess the play on words would be Hugh Morris?
In Japan, I got to do a lot of different things. I worked in Mexico. I worked in Puerto Rico. I worked in Japan. I learned a lot of different styles. And then when I came back into WCW, I was more of what I call a punch kick guy. All the things I could do cool that were 320-pound guys weren't doing didn't really fit in, but at certain times I was allowed to use them, if that makes sense. But I guess I had a role to play in WCW, and it's not hard to adjust. It was hard to taper things down a little bit, but it was a lot easier than Japan.
And you also mentioned Jerry Jarrett's name. I wanted to drop that name in there since he's now somewhat involved with TNA. I know it's more Jeff's project, but what do you think of TNA's product? And you mentioned you still like getting in the ring. Would that be something that you might even consider?
Oh, I'd absolutely consider it. I know Jeff very well. Like I said, his dad gave me a big break back then. I think TNA is great. I think everything needs competition. Without competition, nothing's going to grow. I think they're doing a good job. I think they're new. I think the people are catching on to it. They've got some, they brought back some names like Sting and Nash and the guys that come back in, but the young guys they have are impressive. And I like the product. Yeah, I like the product. I'd like to see them really blow up and really give everybody a run for their money. The more shows out there, the more companies, the more work there is for everybody.
Now, which young talents in TNA are you most impressed by?
I like Christopher Daniels. I dare to say he's a young guy. I've known him since he started. I like Samoa Joe. I like AJ Styles. The extreme thing is cool to me because I like guys that take risks. I'm not so sure about some of the risks because I'm an old fart now. I enjoy that kind of stuff.
You mentioned earlier that you have, for a big man, you have a lot of different moves like the Moonsault. When did you start using the Moonsault, and what made you decide to keep using it throughout your career?
I used the Moonsault. I was taught it in a pool in Puerto Rico during a barbecue, and I was drunk. And I was actually dared. I think I was compared to Fred Flintstone jumping in a pool. So I did it, and I continued to do it while someone was spiking my orange juice. And I was actually threatened that if I didn't use it when I went back to Japan, that they were going to take me off every tour. So that became my new finish.
That's probably the only finisher in history that was ever inspired by the Flintstone flop.
Yes, that's exactly what it was, too.
We got to ask you this question. You worked so long in WCW, and you were kind of known as the locker room leader by most, and it was kind of leaked on the internet that a lot of guys backstage respected you. When you finally captured the U.S. title, and they did the tribute to you on Nitro when all the guys came out on the stage and cheered, was that legitimate, and was that legitimate emotion that we saw from you?
Yeah, that was, I think it was Irvine, California. And, everybody was talking and, regular day. And then as the show got closer, no one was really saying much to me. And, I think I had a double concussion or something anyway, so I wasn't really paying attention to a lot of people. And me and Gene, even Chavo and Lash and those guys, nobody was really talking to me. So I wasn't sure if I just got my bell rung again or, whatever was going to happen. And then that happened. And Gene Okerlund caught me off guard, and that was probably the most real thing I've ever done. And that was great. I love that. That was one of the best things that's ever happened to me in or out of the ring.
Even as a fan, that kind of saw you when you came in, and they had you doing mostly commercials and like squash matches and such. Yeah. To see you progress to that, and when they did that tribute, it kind of was like, well, this guy really is this company, and I'm going to go ahead and compare you to the Undertaker in that they really do respect you, and you were the locker room leader of those guys.
Well, thank you. You know, a lot of people said it. I just did. I don't know what I did to deserve it. I was just me, but I'm for the business, and I think everybody knows that. And what a way to, you know, like what a great tribute. Looking back at it, I get embarrassed about it and stuff like that. But I dug WCW. I stood by it, and I loved all those guys.
Do you miss it to this day?
WCW, yeah, there was a certain camaraderie, you know, and it's the same when I was with the WWE. I mean, I had the same. I got along with the guys. I just people just take to a big, swollen up fat guy with a crazy laugh. So you know, I've never had a problem dealing with people, unless you read the internet, and then I'm like the worst guy in the history of the world. But I guess in the locker room, I'm okay.
I think Hardcore Holly on the internet has that reputation.
Yes, he does.
We'll get to that in a few minutes, I'm sure.
Well, still with WCW for a little bit. What was the locker room atmosphere like when WCW was sold?
It was real quiet. Panama City. My wife was just asking me that question. We got there and we started seeing WWF staff signs everywhere, and then we saw a WWF truck, and now WWE, but it was still WWF. And nobody knew what was going on, and some of the older guys, or you know, veteran guys that were there were wondering, you know, what the hell was going to happen. And I just sat back with Chavo and a couple of guys, and we said, "Wow, this is it. All the rumors were true." And I really didn't think much of it. I got asked to do the dark match before the live broadcast. I was pretty pleased about that because I talked to Shane McMahon and Jerry Briscoe and Bruce Pritchard, and you know, they seemed to know about me. And I just figured whatever was going to happen was going to happen.
Well, if I can ask you this, and you can feel free to ignore it if you'd like to, would you have taken the buyout knowing what you know now?
No.
You wouldn't have?
No. I wasn't even in that position. I didn't have one of those kind of contracts.
Oh, okay.
But when they, I think by the time I got home from Panama City, I'd gotten a phone call from John Laurinaitis or Jim Ross. I can't remember which one of the two. And they'd set a date for me to meet with them, and I just jumped on it because, you know, you hear a lot of guys say it, and the money's good, and everybody makes money, and this and that, but it was just, you got to keep going. And like I said, WCW was great, but when WCW wasn't there was only one place to go, and I had an opportunity to go.
Now, what did you think of how the WCW Invasion? Do you think that turned out well, or do you think it lived up to expectations?
No, I don't think it lived up to expectations. I think it was something that came out of the chute real strong. And I think the more, you know, whatever knowledge I might have or not, I don't have, I just think it was overthought. And instead of letting a natural progression happen, I think, you know, we kept beating ourselves to the punch.
Now, is it true, to the best of your knowledge, that Kevin Sullivan requested that you be brought to WCW in '95?
I know I was brought in by Kevin Sullivan. It was the night after Vader and Paul Orndorff had their skirmish. And the exact words from Kevin Sullivan, he said, "Are you still wrestling?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Are you still fat?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Can you be in Macon, Georgia tomorrow?" And I said, "Yes." I met Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan, and Kevin Sullivan in the bathroom in the Macon Arena. We shook hands, and that's how I began WCW.
I hope you washed first.
You know what? Hell no. I met Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff, and Kevin Sullivan in the bathroom. I washed my hands for a week.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Well, getting back to your early days in WCW, what do you think of being part of the Dungeon of Doom?
I thought that was awesome. What a bunch of misfits, the quoted thing. I mean, I'm standing there with one-man gang, Brutus Beefcake, Kevin Sullivan, Ming, the Barbarian, the Giant. I mean, I'm sitting there going, you know, I'm a big fan of wrestling. I was like, this is cool, the big boss man. And I think I might have been the smallest guy in the group. And I was like, this is different. I like this.
Now, you compare those days of wrestling to what we have today, and it's almost like night and day. What did you prefer more? Did you prefer the more, for lack of a better term, entertainment that's kind of more towards, I guess, teenage audiences rather than more geared towards kids?
I don't know. I just like, I know there's, it's changed now and there's a lot of talking and there's a lot more skits and things like that. I like to wrestle. I like to entertain the people from in the ring. I'm not a, I don't know. I know the progression and I always say you got to move with it, but I like when we just geared it towards wrestling. I know we're sports entertainers, but I just like wrestling.
Fair point. Very fair.
Now, why didn't they have you be Hugh Morris when you came to the WWE? Or I think they had you be him in the Invasion, but when they brought you back in 2002,
well, they
went back to being Bill DeMott.
Yeah, I started out as Hugh Morris at the Invasion, and then at Tough Enough 3, I guess about the third day in at Tough Enough 3, there was a conference call between the powers that be and the people at the Tough Enough. And I guess they'd watched the first 3 days of tape, and they said, "Holy cow, we want that guy." And I told them, "That's the guy you have now." And they said, "Well, the hell with Hugh Morris. He's fired. We want Bill DeMott." I said, "Okay, done." But it was weird, being Hugh Morris for so long and doing that thing. But the only thing that changed was the name. It was the same guy, same, attitude, same kind of craziness, I guess.
You mentioned doing Tough Enough. Did you go to the office interested in that, or did the office come to you?
Actually, Al Snow, I'm terrible with dates and where I've been and stuff, but I think we were in Toronto, and Al approached me at one of the shows and said my name was being thrown around and was I interested, and I didn't even have to hesitate. I love, it goes back to WCW, I love helping people, I've not been, to a lot of people, I've never been a star, or I didn't deserve to be considered a star. I love this business, so the business is about making people who they are, and that's kind of been my thing.
Now,
I made a career out of making people, so I love training. I respect the business, and I want other people to come in and respect it.
Exactly. Well, when we see Tough Enough, we know that it's somewhat done for TV, and it's not really wrestling training. It's kind of to see who's got what it takes more so than that. When you watch that, though, when you see that, how different was that kind of training compared to what you would be doing if you were hired for a seminar, or what we would have seen you doing backstage at DSW, Deep South Wrestling?
Well, I think what you saw, especially Tough Enough, like the $1 Million Tough Enough, you didn't see any training, and there was a lot more media because there was so much at stake. And the guys traveled a lot more to the shows, so there wasn't really a lot of training. But in Tough Enough 3, I wish they could have shown all the training we actually did. But like you guys said, and I think most people know, they can only fit so much in a half-hour show every week or whatever it is. But I mean, proof is in the pudding. Johnny Nitro's a legitimate superstar, and he went through the training, not just through the TV part and the ha-ha part and the doing stuff for TV. He went through some training, and that's kind of a small part of what we did in DSW was we went at it. I mean, it's 9 hours a day. It's not just 2 hours a day and pay me and let me do what I want to do.
Well, you really did put the guys through the ringer, but does it give you a special feeling to see, you said it's all about making guys, when you see a guy that you really helped out finally make it to the big dance in WWE, does it really make you feel good inside?
Yeah, Johnny Nitro, I love him. I loved him then. Matty Capitelli, Melina, who was with us at Tough Enough 3 and got cut. The Miz. I mean, you can go on and on. The guys that have come up, the Michelle McCools and Crystal and the Gemini and Matt Stryker and all these people who had something to offer, and I put my little touch in there, and whether I helped them or not, I still say I helped them. That's a feather in my cap.
Now, what did you think of the incident that happened between Hardcore Holly and Matt Capitelli?
Completely harmless, so blown out of proportion. Matt, blonde hair, blue-eyed, good-looking kid. All the girls loved him. I mean, the MTV women loved him. So when that happened, everybody was just thought Bob was some heathen. I was there as one of the trainers. I would have never let it get out of control. I don't think anything was done out of school. I just think when you have a chance to hit the rewind button and play the same kick to the chest and stuff like that over and over again, that, it's TV. And for TV, it did exactly what it did. It made Matt Cappotelli a household name and everybody loved him. And it just increased Bob Holly's reputation. But make no mistake, Bob Holly was there to teach that day. He wasn't there to abuse anyone.
Well, you mentioned the internet earlier, and the internet really got all over Hardcore Holly with that one, and a little bit you as well, because you were telling them, well, you just got to be tough enough and things like that to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's your opinion of the internet and how they can kind of really start borderline crusades on guys?
Well, I guess so. Ever since I've been in Deep South, I've learned a lot more about the internet. The younger kids, they're always on the computer and stuff, and always hear who I abused and how it happened. I think the internet's great. Johnny Rods told me a long time ago that whether they're talking good or bad about you, as long as they're talking about you.
Right.
I'm not sure that comes into play anymore, because sometimes the bad stuff can probably hurt you, as I think it did hurt me. But I say to each his own. I mean, the guy at the end of the day, whoever's being talked about knows what happened. And if you let it get to you, then everybody has the right to get you a little crazy. You're public figures. I mean, scrutiny's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you think Matt Cappotelli learned from his experience with Bob Holly?
Yeah, I sat down with Matt for hours after that. I went up to that billion-dollar house that they stayed in, and I had a long talk with all the kids, and it was a heartfelt talk. I love Matt Cappotelli. I think if he didn't understand, he wouldn't have continued to train and become part of OVW and do the things he did. I think it was a learning experience. You take kids that have never been out of their hometown, you stick them in front of 14 cameras 24 hours a day. You stick big, aggressive men in front of them, showing them something they've never learned before, because after all, they just see what they see on TV. So it's all new to them. But I think Matt was made for it. I know Matt enjoyed it while he did it, and I know Matt and Bob have talked since then, and there's no animosity.
Well, one of the stories that we hear about, a little bit about you, is that you were involved with a lot of the ribs. I don't know any particulars, so don't ask me to give any quotes, but I do remember hearing your name associated with a lot of them. Could you give us an example of a really good rib that you saw either backstage at WCW or WWE? Because we obviously saw some that you did in Tough Enough.
No, see, there's stories. I don't even know what that word means.
Ah, okay.
I don't even, no.
Is that you pleading the fifth, kind of?
Yes, that's the first time I've ever pleaded the fifth, and I'm going to stick to it.
All right. Over the years, you've worked under a number of different monikers or names. One that stood out to me when I was doing research for this interview was Crash the Terminator.
Yeah.
How exactly did that name come about?
That name came about, I was going to Germany with Rocco Rock. And right before that, Eddie Mansfield, there's a name from the past.
Exactly, yeah.
Who knew Johnny Rods, was writing a movie. And in the movie, one of the characters' names was Crash. And I was casted to that part. So when I went over to Germany, the Road Warriors didn't show up for that tour, so they shaved the rest of my head into a mohawk, and we discussed the name Crash. So I stayed with Crash the Terminator, and I think through Mexico it was Crash the Eliminator, and then in Japan it stayed Terminator, but Crash came from a movie that never came to be from Eddie Mansfield.
Excellent, man. Well, we have a couple word associations for you. Basically, we know that your career has been just so long and you've been associated with so many different wrestlers, either in stables or famous opponents that you had. We'll get back to a few more psychology questions, because I do want to pick your brain about training, because that's the kind of thing that really gets me off, to be blunt with you. But I want to ask you a couple word associations. If you have a one-word answer, that's cool. If you want to share a story or a rib or whatever you want to call it, go for it. How about Lance Storm?
Lance Storm is the funniest, serious guy I've ever met in my life. I love Lance Storm.
Hacksaw Jim. Oh, what is that?
No sense of humor.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Jim Duggan. Jim Duggan was took me under his wing when I first came in, and I respect Jim Duggan.
How about somebody we saw you get a little bit emotional about, Rocco Rock?
He's my brother. That's it. I got nothing else.
And since we're going to keep the negative momentum going. How about the Wall?
The same thing. I mean, I've lost a lot of friends over the past couple of years, and those two guys meant the world to me.
Now, are you one of the people who are in the camp of blaming the wrestling business, or do you think it's something that's out of the hands and it's just an unfortunate coincidence?
For the guys passing away,
yes.
How do you blame a business that took guys who came from nothing like myself? That's like me suing someone for losing my job. I came from nothing. Jerry Tootie, a Jersey boy who didn't do anything before that. Rocco Rock, who was a boxer, whose claim to fame was Public Enemy. I mean, we came from different lifestyles, and then we became household names. So no, I don't blame the business, and I don't blame the guys. I think it's just victims of circumstance.
So what do you think when you see things like Vince McMahon on the HBO special that he did that time, and Bob Costas kind of pointing the finger at him, saying, this is your fault kind of thing? What do you think of things like that?
I think I've never been in a room, and I've never been privy to Vince McMahon holding a gun to anyone's head and saying this is what you have to do to become who you are. I think anybody who blames a single man for other people's, mistakes or things that happen bad to other people, I think it's just a cop-out. I think everybody individually just has to man up or woman up to what they do and quit pointing the finger at the guy who's made everybody who they are.
All right, how about Jimmy Hart?
I love Jimmy Hart, best manager in the world, one of my best friends. I love him to death. He walks on water.
All right, how about a man who recently has retired, the Big Show, Paul White?
I love Paul White. A lot of fun. We share a lot of stories. I'm sure he'd plead the fifth as well. A great talent, but a great guy behind the scenes. I love Paul.
How about somebody who's got an interesting career change of late? How about your former manager, Major Guns?
What is she doing where she's got a career change?
She's now doing adult films.
I don't know anything. I love Tylene Buck. She's a good girl.
And if you're searching for her on the internet, she both goes as Tylene Buck and Rebecca Wild. So
yes,
go for it.
I love Tylene Buck. She's a good girl.
Blame Canada.
Well, goes back to Lance Storm. No sense of humor. She became a porno star.
Well, they're very liberal up there in Canada.
Yeah, apparently.
All right. How about Hulk Hogan?
Hulk Hogan, great guy. He was an icon when I got in there. He treated me with nothing but respect. I have nothing but respect for him, and another guy who I would do anything for.
Now, what do you think about a lot of the internet fans that are kind of negative towards Hogan? And a lot of people actually blame him for the demise of WCW.
I mean, unless I heard it from a guy who was sitting next to me every day for 7 years and had a halfway decent argument, how can you blame Hogan for that's like blaming him for the popularity of the business. I mean, how dare he? You're always going to go after the guy who's on top. And again, this is just my opinion. He doesn't need me to defend him, but what jackass blamed him for selling WCW? I mean, it was AOL and Time Warner and Coke and all these other guys. I mean, I don't blame. How can you blame Hulk Hogan?
How about Eric Bischoff?
Eric Bischoff, I got nothing bad to say. Eric Bischoff gave me an opportunity, and I ran with it.
Exactly. He's one of the interviews that we did just a few months ago, and that was one that I really got a kick out of, just because you get to finally ask him things about all the things that people say about him, either behind his back or to his face. And I mean, it was really a kick, and I'm glad to hear that you have respect for him, because I respect him.
How could I not respect the guy who said, "Hey, Hugh," because that's what he called me, "this is what we'd like to do. Are you in or out?" I mean, he gave me an opportunity. He never, I mean, I know there's a lot of stories out there, and again, I wasn't tied into the top talent. I was just Hugh, and I was just in the locker room. Eric Bischoff gave me a ton of opportunities, so there's no ill feelings there at all.
How about one of the most creative names in the history of the business, and I'm being a little bit facetious, Hugh G. Rection.
Hugh G. Rection.
Yeah.
Was the biggest, most embarrassing explanation to my mom I ever had to give in my 40 years. And I swore to God after the pay-per-view they'd never use it again. And then the next night on Raw, there it was in the bottom of the screen, Hugh G. Rection.
Oh, my God.
So I don't know what to say. That's a stiff question. Get it?
Why did they come up with new names for you guys?
I got that one. It took me a second. I'm a little slow, but there we go. Okay. Go ahead, Patrick.
Oh, I was going to say, why did they change all your, like Chavo and all you guys, they changed your names when they formed the Misfits in Action. Why did they do that?
They had nothing before us. I mean, when Vince Russo came in, it was one of those things, and we were just it was a play on words. We were a bunch of misfits. I mean, he took Lash LaRue, who was a talented kid. I think he was 21 at the time. Chavo Guerrero, who has all the talent in the world. You take a guy like Bill DeMott. You don't know what to do with him, but you really don't want to just sit him at home. So you took a bunch of misfits and put them together, and we sat down with Vince Russo and said, listen, we're a bunch of misfits. Let me come out and do what I do. And that's when the tie-dye came in and the fatigues, because anybody who grew up with me, I've always been in fatigues and tie-dye, a little off the wall, color coordination. And we just took off. So they gave us names. And I think in the beginning the names were a rib. To fit the Army thing, Captain Rection and Lieutenant Loco and, Corporal Cajun was a rib, but we sat as a group every day and we turned it around and we just took it and, we took it and ran with it.
My favorite was Private Stash.
Private Stash was because the guy wouldn't share. He was Private Stash. And he got mad when we gave him that name. So, he didn't last long with the Misfits, but another good guy.
Mm-hmm.
What about Van Hammer?
Van Hammer, he was a good cat. He had a lot of talent. I think he's one of the guys who felt like he was in the business long enough where he deserved more respect than I think he thought he was getting. I think he had a heck of an opportunity with the Misfits, and I wish he could have seen it that way. But when there's guys that have been in the company long enough, I guess they see things differently. I always just chose to take what was in front of me and go with it.
Do you think that's an easier way to live?
I don't know if it's an easier way to live, but it's probably an easier way to sleep.
I guess the last name we'll give you unless Chad wants to give you a couple. Chad, let him go.
Yeah, I have a couple more I'd like to ask him.
Sure.
Ric Flair.
Well, the true champion. Nothing but a pro. Always treated me with respect. Ric Flair is top notch in my book.
And Chavo Guerrero.
I love Chavo to death. Chavo will
Had a lot of heat from the internet insiders, whatever they want to call themselves. What are your thoughts on what they've done with Chavo as a player?
I think it's just business, but it becomes believability. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I think they're doing their job because the people are biting, good, bad, or indifferent. Somebody's watching to hate Chavo. Somebody's watching to cheer Ray on. And guys, all we are is soap opera stars. That's all we are. And some people just take it a little more to heart, but I don't think there's any disrespect behind it. And yeah, sometimes it goes a little too far, but who are we to say what goes too far?
Mm-hmm.
I wish them all the best, all three of them. I love all three of them, and I want everybody to do well.
Mm-hmm. And the last, I guess, would be the leader of the circus, Vince McMahon.
Nothing but respect. Every time Vince has been a great man to me. We've been able to talk openly and honestly, and excuse me. Again, another guy who's given me a world of opportunities, and I have nothing ill to say about him.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, before we let you go, I want to ask you a little bit about psychology, because like I said, we got a chance to see Tough Enough. We didn't really get a chance. We got to see how tough the kids are and what they get to go through and all that such. But when you teach guys about psychology, do you try to tell them that part of the story, you got to tell the story in the ring? Because it seems like, and I'm not trying to pick on the business or anybody in it in particular, but it seems like they're kind of losing sight of what works in terms of psychology in the ring.
I told my guys, and I say my guys in Deep South, and any of the guys I've ever dealt with in 18 years,
mm-hmm.
I'll give you my personal feelings on psychology. It's not something you can try to do. It's not something you can try to make people feel. It's not something you can make sense out of. If you're in a bar fight and I punch you in the face, then you're either A, going to man up or run away. There's my psychology. If you're portraying something in a promo. You have a minute to put, to tell your story in an interview before you get to the ring, and you're a badass, and you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and you get in the ring, and you play to the people. There's no psychology.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best people with that are Ric Flair's, are excuse me, Hulk Hogan's, or Vince McMahon's,
Mm-hmm.
or Eric Bischoff's, Chris Benoit's. The list goes. Triple H. They say what they mean, they do what they say, and they mean what they do.
Mm-hmm.
That psychology to me is different than everybody else. I'm a big fan of, when I get in the ring, you're going to know it's my ring. That's always been my psychology. You can't be 6'2", 340 pounds, and wave to the crowd unless you're Doink, which then it fits.
Right.
But, psychology is different for every, in Knoxville you have one psychology, in Nashville you have a different psychology. I just think you have to stick to your game plan and find what works. And psychology is a tricky word in this business.
Right.
I just think believability fits a lot better.
Right. Now, you mentioned something about something's working in some places, and I got into a pretty good discussion, not argument. It wasn't an argument because I was actually enthralled by what he was saying, but with Ricky Morton, and he was telling me, when you work New York, you got to work a certain style, but when you work Nashville, you got to work a certain style.
Right.
Is that absolutely true? And how do you, when you guys are kind of grounded to one territory, like you were in Deep South, sort of, how do you kind of teach them different styles then?
Well, you give them a scenario, or you put them in there with someone different, or you paint a different picture. Every night at the Deep South Arena, every week, there's 300 plus people who come in to see these cats learn their trade and to put on a wrestling show, because the marquee still says professional wrestling.
Mm.
And you give them scenarios. That's where storylines come in. That's where, creative things come. That's where somebody's personality comes out. Stone Cold would be a badass and get booed in Cleveland, Ohio, and then the next night in Sacramento, he would, the biggest cheers in the world. It's, you work towards what works. Psychology is finding out your audience and seeing what works. Kane is a killer in, Memphis, and then a huge star in Rochester, New York.
Mm-hmm.
And working with Ricky Morton and having the opportunity to work with Robert Gibson very closely the past 6 months, it's something that you almost can't explain. You have to let the guys live through. So when the light goes on, they go, wow, I get that. Watching Matt Stryker learn his psychology over the past year has been a big kick for me, because he, I talked to him about it and he goes, well, I get it. I understand.
Mm. I think when you're out there, it probably becomes a little bit easier, because you start to actually grasp, this works, but this doesn't, and I should do this more often.
Yeah, it's very hard to there's guys that are great teachers, and there's guys that are great explainers, if that's a word.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a doer. I'm not. I just sit down and let's talk it out over the chalkboard, because there's no real life to that.
Okay, one more question, and then we'll give you a chance to, announce your availability. But I wanted to ask you, John Cena. He seems to have kind of what you were saying. He gets cheered one place, but another place he gets booed. And I mean, to me, I've always kind of tried to figure out the logic behind it. And as a wrestler yourself who trains these guys, what would your advice be to him?
I think John, and I had an opportunity to train with John when he first came up, and John and Randy Orton and Hogan and all those guys. John's come a long way. I like John because he's trying to bring it back to what he was a fan of. He respects it. He knows the history of the business, and he's trying to bring it back both in the locker room and out in front of the people. And I think in the very beginning, it kind of confused him that someone would boo him with the great build-up he had. But he stayed with what he knows and what he does the best, and that's psychology. I mean, it's got to go back to the people cannot determine who you are. You have to bring the people back to the business. Once the people start calling your moves and telling you what to do, and counting to 2 and telling you, when they say this sucks, and you change what you're doing because some one drunk guy says you suck, then the people control the business. And yes, they're fans. I love them to death, but I was always under the impression that we made them come to us.
Mm. And
John Cena is learning that now, and he's bringing the people back to him. It's not throwing him off. And I think John has a great deal of respect for the business, and he's a good dude. He's a good cat.
Mm. This might be a stupid question, but it's something that I've noticed, and just one last thing I wanted to ask you. The 1-2 kick out, you know what I'm talking about? You get 1, 2, and almost 3, and then they kick out. It seems like they do that almost every time somebody gets pinned these days. I mean, do you think that that's really detrimental to, like, building up the psychology of the match?
We that's one of the big things in working with the Assassin and Deep South, and just had this conversation right before I was released with Steve Kern, who was down with me for 3 days. And it's things that you try to change about the business, but it's commonplace. You know what I mean? You get so used to doing it, it becomes part of your repertoire or something, and it's habits. Wrestling is habits. It's comfort zones a lot of times. And I think that's what I've been trying to push the past 2 years in training full time, is that don't be comfortable. Don't form habits. You know, keep the people guessing. And that 1-2 thing is just a personal pet peeve. Boy, I just like to jump over the rail every time I saw a 2 poster out there and just kind of pie face somebody. But that's just me.
Well, as you said, you're obviously you're interested in doing seminars, and I think you might have mentioned, would you be actually interested in actually wrestling for some indies?
Absolutely. I've been approached. I mean, the response has been unbelievable. I didn't think there were still Bill DeMott fans out there. I still get kind of silly about that. I've been approached about doing some training camps, and I would love to do that. And I'm definitely interested in getting back in the ring and bringing back some of that, you know, that big happy guy stuff back to the ring and giving the people a show. Anybody who wants to contact me can get on AOL at BigSweetWilliam@AOL.com and just get a hold of me. Any request won't be turned down. I love this business, and the fact that people are still getting in touch with me and the response about being released, I got nothing but respect for the wrestling fans.
Excellent, excellent. And if you ever need any help with any promotion or anything, just give me a call or send me an email, and I'll definitely help you out with the website. Before we let you go, can we ask for one little favor?
Absolutely.
Can we ask you for station identification?
Sure. What do you want to say?
Guys, what do you want them to say?
Basically, this is Bill DeMott or Hugh Morris, or any way you want to spin it, and you're listening to the Pile Driver.
Okay. Tell me when you're ready.
We're ready to roll whenever you are.
This is Bill DeMott, a.k.a. Hugh Morris, a.k.a. General Erection. Like it or not, you are listening to the Pile Driver.
My name is James Walsh, and I'd like to thank you for checking out the Wrestling Epicenter here on YouTube. If you have not done so already, please do. Click that subscription button and the notifications bell. This way you'll be notified anytime I upload any new or new to you classic content from our archives that date back to 2002. If you get the opportunity, please also check out www.wrestlingepicenter.com for all your wrestling news and info needs, as well as our store to keep us going free and clear. Without any further delay, let's get to why you came here, the content here on YouTube.